Hi, everybody. It's Michaela Byer. Welcome to the show. And my guest today is Mr. Brent Muscat. A lot of you will know him from Faster Pussycat, and these days he is playing with the Saints of Las Vegas, although we are in a time of COVID at the time this was recorded. But I'm so honored to have him on. Welcome to the show, Mr. Muscat.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, so let's start from the very beginning. Where were you born and raised?
Born in Hollywood, California, and was raised in a suburb about 45 minutes outside of LA called Monrovia, California.
Mm. And of course, you were raised with your brother Todd, who is also a musician.
Right, and my middle brother Corey,
Cool.
who's not a musician, but yeah. So there's three of us, three boys.
Nice. Alrighty, and were you a musical kid? When did you first start to learn guitar?
I think I started playing trumpet when I was in fourth grade, and played trumpet from like fourth, fifth, sixth, I think, till about about seventh grade. And I was really thinking about playing trumpet professionally. But when I was younger, I fell and smashed my face and had to like have braces.
Oh.
And I couldn't, kind of knock my teeth loose and had to kind of braces to hold them back in. And I couldn't play trumpet for a while. And I remember taking my trumpet to a musical store and trading in for a guitar.
Oh.
Pawning it for a guitar. And I did that, I think, when I was in about, eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade. And I didn't tell my mom I was doing it. So, of course, I got grounded that summer. I was basically, the guitar just sat in my mom's room. I was kind of grounded from it summer. While she was at work, I would sneak in and grab it, play the guitar. So I started playing that, So yeah, I started with trumpet and then switched to guitar, probably around eighth or ninth grade. Started playing serious probably, ninth grade, freshman of high school.
Okay. And did you form a band then, or was it more of a?
Yeah, I had like high school couple different high school bands. And when I was in high school too, I think my junior and senior year, I was playing with older guys, and I started playing clubs and stuff. And like I was mostly in like punk bands and stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, I started playing clubs when I was like, probably junior and senior year of high school, and playing a lot of like backyard parties and stuff like that. And then I think I was still basically, when I first joined Fast Pussycat, I was in my last year of high school. So I remember they came to my high school graduation.
Yes, I was going to ask you to share that story with us. I know that was the time when Kelly Nichols was still in the band. So was it Tammy Down, Greg Steele, Kelly Nichols, and Mark Mitchells who came to your graduation? Mark Michaels. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the guys that came, it was Greg and Tammy are the ones that came to my graduation.
Okay.
Out of the band. The other guys didn't come, but yeah, there's pictures of those guys at my graduation. So
like, did they come there like in the full rock star getup, or did they try to button up for the day?
Tammy was pretty rocked out, if I remember right.
Awesome.
Yeah. I had my green gown, like a green cap and gown on, and I think the only rock and roll, I kind of had longer black hair, but I remember having like the one kind of rocker thing I had was like a spider web tie on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and did they at least, did they try to behave, or like what
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah. They behaved, and it was cool. But yeah, there's like, I still, like I said, I have a picture, I think in a photo album somewhere where you could see Greg and Tammy both at my high school graduation.
Awesome. Now,
That's pretty cool.
that actually leads me to my next question. Where did you originally meet your bandmates? Do you remember?
Um, well, I'm trying to think how it went. I met Tammy first, and then through Tammy, of course, he said, when I met Tammy, I hung out with. He was working at the Troubadour,
Mm,
doing lights at the Troubadour in Hollywood, and we had mutual friends, some girls that were actually living in Las Vegas, um, that introduced me to Tammy. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to find a band, looking for a guitar player." I go, "Perfect, I'm looking for a new band." And he said, "I'm working tonight. Come down to the Troubadour down in Hollywood, and
mm.
I'll get you in." And I remember going to the Troubadour. I remember seeing him walk across the stage with this blonde hair and these big brown, blonde hair and these big bushy brown, dark brown eyebrows. And I just remember he looked like a Muppet or some kind of Sesame Street character to me. He looked really funny and kind of weird, but it was kind of like, and it was really funny. He was like carrying a purse, and he was like dressed in pink and these kind of pink fingernail. And he was very kind of glammed out, but kind of like, I remember him carrying a purse. I was just kind of like looking at him, kind of going, "Oh, he looks interesting." I thought,
Yeah.
he, yeah. When I first saw him, I just kind of thought he looked weird.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually, a fan recently posted a very early picture of him where he's wearing fishnets and boots, no pants though, and he's all decked out in makeup. I'll send it to you later on, but it's a cute picture.
yeah, he definitely was character. I mean, when I saw him, I remember seeing him like, oh, he walked across the stage like he was working, but I hung out with him and stayed at his house, like just slept on his couch and started like playing songs right away with him. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I met this other guitar player too that I want to be in the band," and his name was Greg Still. And I remember very soon, like the next day, I think I was hanging out with him. I think the second day we drove over to Greg's house and hung out with Greg and was writing music with Greg too right away. So it was like it was me, Greg, and Tammy that got together first, and then we got into rehearsal with Mark, and we got Kelly in the band pretty soon. But there was a few months that we were together before we got Kelly. We had another like bass for like a few months named Walter,
Okay.
and but we got Kelly pretty soon, and then we had Kelly for a few months, and then he got in a motorcycle accident while he was in the hospital and like recuperating. We started playing with Eric Stacy,
Right.
and Eric was so much like ahead of us musically that when he joined the band, he really changed the sound of the band.
Oh,
And when we were playing out clubs, the guy who ended up signing us, the record company who ended up signing us, basically said, he had seen us with Kelly, and then when he saw us with Eric, he's like, "This is the band I want to sign." So we kind of didn't really have a choice. We're like, if we want to make a record, and by the time we got signed, we were probably together. We were probably with Kelly a few months, like 2 or 3 months, like 2 months. But by the time we got signed with Eric, we were probably with Eric like 5 months. We were with Eric longer
okay.
by the time we got signed. We got signed very quick though. I mean, within like 6 or 7 months of like playing out.
Nice. That is really quick. Um,
Yeah.
like I'm kind of curious, like how you began as a songwriter. I mean, were you writing songs before you met Tammy and Greg, or did that kind of develop as you got to know them better, and then when Eric joined in?
Well, I was writing songs I mean, basically when I first started playing guitar, as soon as I got in like high school bands, I was writing songs for my high school bands.
Okay.
But it was real easy at the time because, like I said, I was into throughout like my last from like I guess seventh and eighth grade through my senior year, I was into punk rock. So
Hmm.
punk for me, I mean, it was like three chords.
Yeah.
four if it's really, it's like Ramon's song, three so it's really easy to write, So I was in, like I said, punk band, so it was just like really super simple to write those kind of songs, So in some ways, I think I was lucky because I didn't start right away playing complicated rock and roll. I started really easy, playing easy songs, and
Yeah.
writing easy songs.
Mhm.
Um, and I took guitar lessons, and I was, I had a lot of influences. I was like playing along with records at home, like Aerosmith and Rolling Stones and Rod Stewart and David Bowie, and so I had those influences, New York Dolls, of course, and then all the punk stuff and post-punk I was listening to.
Did you like Hanoi
Um,
Rocks?
yeah, Hanoi Rocks was like a huge. I mean, loved Hanoi, so all those bands like Hanoi Rocks, So I think when you hear Faster Pussycat's first album, it's a very, it's got rock, it's rock and roll, but it's very punk rock too. I think
Mm-hmm.
the
It,
first record. And one of my friends lives up in the Bay Area, and he's like goes to a bar that I guess Billy Joe from Green Day has does like a DJ set there, and it's funny because Billy Joe from Green Day always like Faster Pussycat's first album, and I was telling my friend, I go, makes sense because that he likes it because that's a very kind of punk album.
mhm.
So it makes sense that the singer from Green Day would like that record, as opposed to maybe the second or third record, which is a little more rock, I guess.
Yep. Yep. And I'm curious. Like, do you know Billy Joe from Green Day at all?
No, no, but like I said, I saw he was wearing a Faster Pussycat hat one time, and I shared the picture on my Instagram.
Cool.
And then, like I said, my friend Britt uh, says that that he'll when he DJs, he plays Faster Pussycat's first album, and I was like, that's really cool, because I'm a fan of Green Day, of course, but I said that kind of makes a lot of sense because you know him being a fan, and his band, I guess, being kind of pop punk and being a big fan of punk.
Mhm.
It's funny that he recognizes that Faster Pussycat album being very punk influenced. I think.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
makes sense him being a fan of that. Um,
And I
and
love
when
the
we
like.
first came out, what's
Oh,
what's
I'm sorry.
that?
Just the video broke up for a minute, but I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the song of that first album. I mean, to me, it really captures the rawness of the band at the time, and just it's a really good example of what that movement sounded like on the Sunset Strip. At least I think.
Oh yeah, I always say that. I always say if you want to know what Sunset Strip that scene was like, and it sounded like, that album's really good because all those songs on that first album were songs we were playing in the clubs at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and when we got signed, we were able to go ahead and record all the songs we were playing in the clubs. Where a lot of bands that at that time signed had pressure to like write newer song, like hit songs and new songs, but
Yeah.
not us. We got really lucky that we were able just to go in and record all the songs we were playing in the clubs. So that's a really good example of what the scene I think sounded like 1986, 87 in Hollywood on the Strip. I think our record is a really good example of that.
Yeah. And I'm glad they were able to let you do that.
Yeah, we're lucky. I mean, we got signed and it was like kind of small money compared to like Guns N' Roses and other bands that were getting signed. Like Jet Boy got signed, they got signed probably twice as much money as we did. Because of that, they had the pressure to go in and rewrite everything.
Okay.
And so Jet Boy's first album, I remember hearing it go, what? I didn't recognize any of the songs because I'm like, they had to go rewrite all the songs, and all the songs most of the songs they were playing in the clubs, they didn't get to record. So it was kind of, I mean, I guess in some ways, we were lucky that we didn't have that big pressure and all that huge money. You know, we got signed for a very small deal, but two things that were good about that is that because they signed us for a very small amount of money, we were able to have creative control, one, and two, we were able to recoup the money that they signed us for. We, you know, within a year, we, you know, recouped their money and then some. You know, they made money on us. You
Nice.
know, so that was good. It ensured that we had at least three records, you know, on the major label.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds like a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty, cool. So, when did you and the rest of the band share a home when you moved to Los Angeles, and what was it like making the transition as such a young man from living in Monrovia to the big city?
Um, Tammy lived with Ricky Rackman, who
Mm,
they did the Cat House together. And
right.
when I first moved out there, I stayed on their couch for a few weeks probably.
Mm,
And I think pretty soon, at one point, I got a girlfriend and I like stayed with, you know, moved in with her.
mm,
And so I was kind of like living all over the place pretty much, you know,
yeah.
kind of they call it the couch tour, you know.
Hmm.
Um,
And
but as far as the whole band living together, no, Greg had his own apartment, and then our drummer, he had a girlfriend, and she had they both worked a day job, so they had their own apartment. Tammy worked on Melrose at Retail Slut, so and he shared an apartment with Ricky. And like I said, I pretty much I always had like a girlfriend, you know, so I usually had a place to live, you know,
yeah.
and then yeah, so but other than that, I mean, I did a little bit of a couch tour, you know, sleeping on different people's couch for probably the first few months while I was out there, you know.
Yeah. And I'm wondering what that was, if you don't mind my asking, what that was like for you and your family. I mean, did your parents have expectations that you would go to college or a trade school or go into service, or were they okay with you going after a musical career?
Um, well, my parents divorced when I was about 8,
Hmm.
and so I lived with my mom, and then at one point, I think when I went to high school, I moved in with my dad, and my dad was mom, you know, would be kind of made up for me at night if I went out to a club with my older brother, and she'd want me to be home by 1 or something, and I'd be in trouble if I got home at 2. So I was always in trouble living with my mom, but my mom would never, you know, she'd wait up for me and worry, you know, if I was out. But once I moved in with my dad, I could pretty much stay out all night long. I mean, I'd come home, he'd be sleeping, you know. I guess because he's a dad and I'm a boy, he didn't worry about me as much, you know.
Yeah.
So when I moved in with my dad through high school, I had a lot more freedom. And then the only thing with my dad is he was basically, it was like when you graduate high school, it's time to get a job.
Mm,
And I was already playing music, and I wanted to be, my goal was to be a rock star. So I was kind of like, I either have to get a job or I have to move out. So I knew once I graduated high school, I pretty much moved to Hollywood right away.
yeah.
And, you know, I think my mom and dad, you know, I mean, my dad would tell me, you know, like realistically, you should have like a second thing to fall back on in case this rock thing, you know, in case your rock and roll life doesn't work out. But you know, I guess they wish me luck, but I pretty much moved out, you know. So once I was, you know, 18 and graduated high school, I was out of there. And um I got signed pretty quick. I mean, within like I think within 6 or 7 months of me moving out to Hollywood, we were playing clubs and selling out the clubs, and I got signed pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I think they were excited when I told them I got signed and was going to make a record. I think they were just kind of like, "Wow, you know what I mean? He actually did it," you know. But I was lucky. I think it was the right time at the right place,
Yeah.
with the right people.
Yeah, I mean,
Everything was like, it was really, I think the stars and planets lined up just right. You know what I mean? At that time.
yeah, and I mean, being in a successful band back then was essentially a job. Like, even if you weren't crazy famous. I mean, now it's much different. I mean, bands. I mean, we're in a time of COVID, but even if COVID weren't
Right.
happening, like bands earn almost no money now, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't here in LA. So.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my friend Britt. I was doing an interview with him, and I was just saying that things are so different. It's really like do it yourself now.
Hmm.
Where back then, I mean, the record companies were huge. They had a lot of money,
Yeah.
from the 80s, late 80s. They had a lot of money to spend, and there were magazines, and there was MTV that
Hmm.
would play in videos, and those things don't really exist now. So there was a big kind of I almost say like a big machine, the machinery to make you really famous.
Yeah.
Where now it's really tough to do. It's a lot to do it yourself.
Hmm.
And so,
I mean, I kind of the way I describe it is it's easier than ever to make music, but it's tougher than ever to get people to listen to it. Just,
yeah, totally.
yeah, just we don't,
But
you know,
back then, MTV, I mean, the record company would spend 50 to 75,000 just to make a video, you
mhm,
know?
yep, and
And so they would spend that kind of money to make a video. There was really pressure for them to go to MTV and make MTV, play it.
mhm,
And to get you on radio stations all across the country.
yeah,
Um, and then we were in a lot of magazines, and we were in that movie, The Metal Years, that came out, around that time.
yes, yeah.
And
But you effectively, your record company was effectively your support system and your
yeah,
buoy into the next level. Whereas, like artists who are, for instance, just putting their work on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever, don't have that behind them now. And I mean, it is what it
they
is.
don't have that. Yeah. And back then there wasn't, I mean, when we came out, there wasn't YouTube, or there wasn't the internet. So all that people had was their radio station,
Mhm.
they had MTV, and they had their magazines, and they'd go down to, I guess, their record store, and they would look at the magazine, and they see, open up, there's Faster Pussycat. They turn on MTV, Faster Pussycat, and then they're listening to the rock station in their town. Chances are they'd hear Faster Pussycat.
Mhm.
And we were touring. I mean, that first year we toured like every day we played. If we weren't like we were opening up for Alice Cooper, Ace Frehley, but if they took a day off, we'd go play a club. So
Oh,
we'd play like every day, and our manager made us work for like a year straight. I mean, every day we were playing at night, and during the day we were either going to a record store doing autograph signing,
mhm.
or we were going to a radio station to do, some kind of interview. So every day, I think I remember just being out for like a year straight, just really working. So yeah, first record, we really worked to sell every single record we sold. We worked really hard.
Nice. Sounds rewarding.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was nice too, because after that, I mean, then I finally, like, first time in my life I ever made some money. I remember like coming home and like getting a check in the mail for like $1,000 or something, and thinking, oh my God, this is just from like playing music. And I remember opening my first bank account, and like, not my first, but like on my own, away from my parents, opening a bank account and getting like a credit card. And I just could remember it was pretty cool, like making money, music and making money.
Uh huh.
And to this day, which is the great thing about it, is that I made those 3 records, those, I call them major label records. It's on Electro Records.
Hmm.
But to this day, I still get like a check in the mail from that music I made back then. I
Nice.
still get money, and it's like quarterly, I get like a royalty check. One other smart thing that we did is a lot of bands like would sell their publishing,
Hmm.
or even like a percentage of their publishing. So if they sold, they'd get like advance, back then they'd get, maybe $50,000 and they'd sell like half their publishing. But our manager was like, don't sell your publishing. He goes, because he was in a band called the Grassroots from the 70s and he still made money. He goes, it's the best thing ever. He goes, don't sell your publishing, own your publishing forever. You'll make money till you die. And it's true. I mean, to this day, I still like make money off and it's great because we're really glad, lucky that we had a really great manager
Hmm.
who kind of knew the business, and he was in a band. Like I said, he was in a famous band himself. So he really gave us a lot of great advice, and made us work.
Hmm. All right. And I'm also curious about the music scene on the whole back then. Like, who were some of your favorite bands from that time? And I'm kind of, and also, like, was there a good mix of camaraderie and competition between Faster Pussycat and the rest of them?
Um, there was definitely like friendly competition between like us and like, I guess you would say like Guns N' Roses and LA Guns.
Hmm.
LA Guns got signed probably about a year after we did. So, I mean, in the very beginning, they weren't really competition. Um, but later, I guess about a year or two later, they became competition. And then there was some nasty competition too between like Guns N' Roses and Poison. They got a little nasty with each other,
Mm, I didn't know that.
but nothing, I think nothing too serious, but there was like words spoken, in the magazines and stuff.
Okay.
But
The main one I hear
we
about,
were
even though,
friendly.
sorry, go ahead.
We were friendly with Guns N' Roses. I was friendly with Guns N' Roses guys. We toured with them.
Mm.
I was friendly with Poison. We were friendly with Poison guys. Tammy kind of grew up hanging out with the Poison guys before we were signed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Um,
It's cool.
yeah, Tammy was like hanging out with them. He might have even been like their like guitar tech, or I don't know what he was doing, but he was definitely hanging out with them and hanging. Yeah, he was good friends with those guys. So we and Axel was like at our very first show, dancing in the audience.
Nice.
He was always he was very supportive. So we were lucky. We kind of fell in between those two bands, kind of style wise too. I kind of fit in between. And I said we got to open up for both of them and play with them. So yeah, there was, I guess you would say, friendly competition as
Okay.
far as I'm concerned, between us and those guys.
Nice. I mean, kind of the
But
big.
what bands did I like? I remember I was a huge Henry Rocks fan, but I had tickets to see them play. But then the thing happened with Vince Neil and the drummer,
Yes.
and
Yeah. I've met a couple of people who had tickets to that, and just it still kills me
yeah,
to this day that more people don't know about them, but you know.
yeah. But they were a huge influence. I love them. Um, as far as the bands live, I mean, Guns N' Roses they were so great live. I mean, I remember seeing them at the Troubadour before they were signed. I was just in Faster, and they were playing the Troubadour, and I was hanging out with my brother, and me and my brother were watching them, thinking these guys are so great. I remember saying to my brother, we were saying that either they're going to be the biggest thing in the world or they're going to be like nothing. I mean, they were that great that they were either going to like explode and fall apart or they were going to be the biggest thing in the world.
Mm, they.
But they were really great. I think out of all the bands, you know, they were really awesome, live. They were so great.
Mm,
Out of,
um,
I think, all the bands, they were probably one of my favorite. Of course, I liked Faster. I was I was a fan of our band. I thought we were pretty cool.
mhm.
Um, but there was tons of bands back then. I can't think of anybody else that really stuck out in my mind. I think out of, like I said, seeing all the bands live, I would say Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses were great, you know.
I'd really love to see the original five get back together, even if it's just for a couple of shows or something.
Oh, Faster or who?
Well,
Or
Faster,
Guns N'
and,
Roses?
Faster and Guns N' Roses.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I would too, but I think I played with Steven Adler. You know, I was in a band with him for a while,
cool.
and he's kind of, I love him. He's a great guy, but I don't think he's ready to be. Uh, um, I don't know how you would say it. I don't think he's kind of ready to be back in that band for right now. You know,
Okay. I mean,
and
I've
I'm
met
not sure it's even a good. It would be a good thing for him because Steven, he's a character. Like I said, I love him, and he's a really great guy. But he, when he was in Guns N' Roses, I think at one point he had a stroke. Um, OD'd on some drugs, but I think when he did that, he had a stroke. So he almost died. So for a while, he couldn't play or even talk right. I mean, he could play. He could play pretty good now, but if you meet him in person, he kind of talks a little out of the side of his mouth, kind of, because he had a stroke.
Yes, I've met him, and I actually read his book.
Yeah.
His stroke occurred a little bit later, but I know that he was having a lot of
Was it
problems.
after Guns N' Roses?
What was
It was
that?
after Guns N' Roses. It was after Guns N' Roses, right?
Exactly. And but I know that when he was still in the band, his drug problem was quite severe, and that's what led to him not being in the band anymore. But
Well, even when I was playing with him, he was dabbling. I think he was having some. I don't think he had quit drugs. Let's just say that he was doing dabbling in some stuff when I was playing with him. So he needs like he. I don't know. Like I said, I love Steven. I think it would be great for him to get up there as a guest, maybe. I just don't think it's probably the best thing for him to be like joining back in that band. I don't think his head's in the right place for it. That's just my opinion. I think when you're a big huge band like Guns N' Roses, you kind of have to have your shit together, you know.
yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't want him
And
to do anything that would jeopardize his health. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing I would worry about. I would worry that it might jeopardize him. You know what I mean? It might hurt him more than it might be a bad thing more than a good thing for him, and maybe the band, you know.
mhm. Yeah, I
And
mean,
I think those guys they know Steven pretty well, so everything I'm saying, those guys know, and they've jammed with him. So I'm sure they've, at one point, I'm sure that they've considered playing with him. I think at one point, I'm sure they jammed with him and saw how he is. And, you know, he's a great guy, but he's kind of, like I said, he's a little bit, I think, emotionally or mentally, a little bit, I don't think ready for that, you know, that kind of commitment and responsibility, you know.
well, I mean, apparently the rest of the band concurs. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
the truth because I don't know him very well, but I've met him occasionally here in town. Like before the plague hit, I would go to events where that he also attended. But one person that I actually one person who's kind of my bucket list for who I want to interview is Izzy Stradlin, and
oh, Izzy's great. Yeah, you know, I think it'd be great to get them all on stage. I think Steven would be a great guest where they could have him out, you know,
mhm.
and that would be great. You know, I think there's no problem with all those guys on stage and playing. You know, at least if they have a concert, maybe they could bring Steven up for 5 or 6 songs. You know,
They
and
actually
even Izzy, yeah, that would be great. You know,
Guns N' the current lineup, with Axel, Slash, and Duff, and some other people, actually did bring Steven in for a couple of guest spots. The one who hasn't appeared at all since the reunion is Izzy Stradlin, and
yeah,
do you know Mark Cantor?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I talk to him from time to time, and he actually said something really cute. I pointed out the fact that it's been now 30. I think it's been almost 31 years now since the original five have been in a room together. Like they've met in twos,
Wow.
yeah, in twos and threes and whatever, but not five. And I said, what do you think would
Wow.
happen if they were ever in the same room? And Mark Cantor paused for a moment, and then he looked at me and said, I think that they would hug each other and cry.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they're all at an age where there's not going to be any kind of they're too old to kind of fight, you know what I mean? And I think they'll know that, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that they would be fine, you know. And I think, and I wouldn't doubt. I mean, I think that they probably will get on stage together at some point, you know, have Izzy and Steven. I think it'd be great, but I don't think it's going to be a thing where maybe I don't think Steven will tour and join permanently. I think it'll be like a guest spot, you know.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, one thing
Yeah.
that I wish they would be able to work out is doing like other stuff together, like documentaries with all five of them involved, or box sets with all
Yeah.
five of them. Just but for whatever reason they haven't worked it. But whatever, that's another conversation.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so moving on. Describe recording your first album. What was it like transitioning from performing on stage to being in a studio?
Well, we had recorded some demos and stuff, and I'd recorded in the studio before with some other bands, just like demos and things. But it was exciting. I'm trying to remember. Like I said, we got signed for compared to like Guns N' Roses. I think we got signed for probably about a quarter of the money they did. I mean, so we were kind of on a budget, you know. It wasn't real fancy. It's in North Hollywood, and it was exciting. But like I said, it was kind of like I was playing with amp. I mean, if you listen to the album, you could kind of hear like my amp is almost blown up. It's like the tone is kind of strange, you know. But I told one of my friends, I'm like, we didn't really have the money to go out and buy new equipment. We just kind of played on the stuff we had.
Well,
And it kind of sounded like it, very raw, and kind of some of the tones on it were, like I said, I think my amp was halfway blown up.
mm.
But we recorded with Rick Browdy, who produced Poison's first album.
Oh, cool.
And he was really cool. He helped Tammy with some lyrics. He was very musical. I mean, especially with lyrics, he was very good. It was we pretty much just went in and just did what we did live. We didn't do a whole lot of, we recorded pretty quick. I think it was within a month. I think we did it in about a month's time.
Nice.
Maybe 3 weeks mostly. And so just going in and just pretty much doing what we did live. There wasn't a whole lot of like extra stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you know, people do a lot of takes and spend a lot of time and have a lot of tracks, but you pretty much what you hear on the record is what you'd hear live, you know? I mean, you have Greg's guitar, my guitar, separate sides. You got the bass, drums, vocals, backup vocals. Maybe we'd have some piano on one song, like Cat House, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it was pretty basic, you know. And
Tammy was actually pretty funny when he was. I watched an interview with him when I was doing the research for this one, and when he was asked about recording the first album, he's like, "What?" The person's like, "What did you like about it?" And he's like, "Just boning bitches in the waiting room." It was funny.
I don't remember him doing that, but I'm sure he might have.
But anyway, so
What else do I remember? You know, there was a receptionist there, this kind of gothic rocker dude. I forget his name, but I remember he was a fan. Like, he was writing to Charles Manson in prison and getting letters back from Charles Manson. That was one thing that was kind of impressive. I remember the receptionist there, this guy, was like writing to Charles Manson in prison. I just remember seeing letters back from Charles Manson. The guy was showing me. So that was one thing that was kind of, I mean, kind of memorable about that studio, I remember.
That's
But
nuts.
other than that, pretty uneventful. I mean, for the most part, you know, just in there and just doing kind of what we did live, you know. It's a pretty raw record, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that's I think that is different about a lot of musicians today as opposed to back then is that back then there weren't as many writers working on each song and as many producers working on each song. Um, I- and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like did I know that you have a writing credit on I think four of the tracks on the first album. Were there any songs that like you started writing as an individual and then brought to the band, or did you just kind of write them together with the others?
Well, some songs, there are certain songs on the first record where even like Cat House, I remember me and Greg partly wrote that, but I don't know if we got credit for it.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like Tammy came up with the idea, but it was mostly like whoever came up with the main idea, even though like we'd bring it together in a room and we'd all contribute and write stuff. Um, but there was a song like No Room for Emotion. I wrote the music thinking it was going to be like a love song, basically, kind of a love. I was thinking like about a love song, and then when Tammy wrote it, it was more like a hate song, you know. But I like what he wrote, you know what I mean. He did his thing to it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was, you know, most of those songs that, like I said, we'd get into a room and kind of put them together as a whole band.
Mhm.
But it was just weird, kind of how the writing credit worked then. I think the second record was a little more fair. We really would be like kind of fought for like if we wrote part of it, we fought a little more for credit. I think on the second record, where like I said, there's songs on that first record. Looking back, I think probably should have had credit for, you know, because we definitely put changed it, you know, put our input in it, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the main thing is all of our songs, we never had any outside writers. It was always our band,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And we were lucky that way too, because a lot of bands got signed. And the record company would force you to write with some songwriters, you know,
Mhm. Yeah,
or
which is pretty much par for the course for musicians of every genre today, for better or for worse. So.
yeah. Um, I can remember like, you know, the bands like big bands like Aerosmith and Bon Jovi, they'd always have like co-writers, you know,
Mhm.
and we never had that. We just wrote everything ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
So
Which I'm happy that's the
that's another reason now. Yeah, and it's cool because now, like I said, we don't really when we make, like I said, we still make money on royalties, and we don't really have to share it with any outside writers, you know.
good.
So we got kind of lucky. I guess in a lot of ways we got lucky, you know.
Mhm. Alrighty, so let's talk about the release of that album. Who did you tour with as an opening act the first time?
I think our first tour was we got put with Ace Frehley and Y&T.
Nice.
Yeah, and we toured with them, and we, you know, the our style of music, I guess, like sleaze rock, was just not out. It wasn't big yet or popular
Mm.
around the country, at least. You know, I mean, maybe in Hollywood it was locally it was popular, but people didn't know it when we first came out. People kind of didn't know what to think. You know, we had when we toured with Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley in some states, especially upstate New York, for some reason, people weren't ready for it. So we'd come out and people would throw stuff at us, you know, and boo, or we want to see Alice Cooper. You know, we had a hard time a little bit. Um, but within a few months, and I think because of MTV and the magazines, people found out about us, you know, and people found out, and of course Guns N' Roses came out, so people knew, okay, there's like a new scene in LA and with Poison too, and bands wear makeup and they have big hair. And
Mhm.
so I think people accepted it more. But, when we first toured, it was so new. People hadn't seen it before. So people were not ready for it the first few months.
Okay.
It took probably about 3 or 4 months before we started getting like positive reaction.
Mhm. Like,
A lot of times it's just people staring. I mean, it was a lot of like stuff getting thrown, but a good night for us would just be people kind of staring at us and just watching us, not knowing what to think.
yeah.
Um,
Do you feel like it made you sharper though, and it kind of made you determined to win over a crowd?
yeah, well, it toughened us up a lot because, and I think our manager probably said too, don't let them, don't get off the stage. Don't let them just stay up there, and it made us fight for it.
Mhm.
And we fought with the crowd. I mean, there were times we were actually fighting with the crowd. I mean, I jumped in one time and was like, I jumped in and punched some guy in the crowd, and the bouncer had to pull me back in, because there's the stage and then there's like security guys lined up, and then there's like a little fence, and then there's the crowd. And I actually jumped from the stage over the security guard, punched the guy, and the security guard had to pull me back in. And
Gosh.
and even our look from that first album, we even toned down the makeup a little. I mean, we toughened up a lot. I mean, you look at us after a few months on tour, and we kind of look a little different. We, toughened up a lot.
That
And
actually,
I was probably, went out, I was, 19 or 20. So I was still growing probably, you know what I mean?
exactly, like that's something that really struck me is how young you were when all this happened. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that of all the people I've interviewed, you were actually probably the youngest person of that scene.
Yeah, I was real young. I was not even old enough to get into the clubs in Hollywood. I had to have my middle brother. I used my middle brother Corey's fake ID when I was first in Hollywood. I remember having his driver's license, and we looked enough alike that I would use that to get into all the clubs and stuff.
My goodness.
But yeah, it toughened us up. That touring definitely toughened us up. And then I can remember on our first tour, first album, we went from Ace Frehley Y&T. I think pretty soon after that, we went and got on the David Lee Roth tour.
Right.
And by that time, maybe we were in magazines and on MTV and stuff. So I can remember opening for David Lee Roth, and I can remember the crowd finally was like, yay, woo, people were into it. And I really felt like, wow, okay, now things are turning around, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
we're getting a positive response from the audience, and, people are clapping and yelling, and
Cool. Yeah, and I
it
can
was
imagine.
fun, finally. And there were like with Ace Frehley and Y&T, there wasn't a whole lot of like, I guess there were girls there, but there wasn't a whole lot of girls. And I can remember when we finally got on the David Lee Roth tour, our first show was down in Florida, and I think it was summertime. And I can remember there were like girls in the audience in like bikinis and stuff.
Mm.
And I can remember looking at Greg going like, think, hey, we finally made it. You know what I mean? Wow, there's actually girls to talk to and flirt with. You
That
know,
sounds like vintage David Lee Roth show to me.
it was. I mean, because of his, also because of his characters at his shows, probably the 30 were at least half were, girls.
Hmm.
You know, and you know, back then too, it was a little bit different time. It seemed like I don't know. Um, People were just, I don't know. It was more that at his shows, there was a lot more. I guess you would kind of say groupies,
Yes. Yeah.
or just women that were ready to like party, like there wasn't a whole lot of like I mean, times have changed a lot anyways, you know. Back then I was young and it was like there's girls and let's party. Woo, girls in bikinis, let's go, you know. So it was something kind of new for me, especially because I was really young, you know,
Hmm.
and pretty, I guess you would say to I was pretty innocent, you know,
Okay.
but, but soon to be corrupted, you know, very
Well,
soon to be corrupted.
yeah. I actually I read Duff McKagan's autobiography where he talks about what it was like on the scene and on tour, and like what was it like for you there? I mean, did you witness a lot of did you have like a fairly normal day-to-day life where you would get up, play with the band, do whatever, and then go to bed, or was it just a crazy myriad of partying and women and other stuff? I mean, and again, I understand there are going to be things that are too personal to talk about, but I am interested to
Well,
hear what it was like.
it was so varied. One day you might, let's say you might be in the middle of the country in a really small town and there's absolutely nothing to do. Maybe, like I said, we were really busy. So even if it was a day off, chances are we'd probably go to a radio station
Hmm.
or to a record store. But once in a while, it was a very rare day off where you'd be like maybe in some really small out of the way town in like Kansas or something, and there's just nothing to do.
Hmm.
You know, you don't know anybody because you're just out on tour. So you don't really have friends yet in these different. I mean, by the time we went out like on the second and third record, I like had friends in like every state. I had like a phone book of if I was bored, I could call people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but the first that tour, you'd go from like not doing anything, hanging out in the hotel lounge or lobby,
Hmm.
hotel restaurant. Um, maybe you'd go to like a strip mall, you know,
Hmm.
nothing to really. But then you'd go to like there'd be like you go to you'd be in Texas, you go to a record store and it's summertime and like there's girls in bikinis, and it was just crazy,
Yeah.
sometimes, where, you know, I can remember one time I was at a I think it was our second record and we're in a record store like in Texas doing an off signing.
Hmm.
And these two girls came in like bikinis. I was just like, oh my God. And they're really pretty. But they were just like, hey, I want to party with you. Let's, take us on your bus. And it was like a day off. So I remember like hanging out with them on the bus because everybody had hotel rooms. So like the whole bus was empty. So it's like sometimes it would be like that where you go on the bus, you'd have the whole bus to yourself.
Hmm.
So it's pretty crazy. It's pretty wild. I mean, we were lucky that I guess we were pretty safe, back then. I mean, the big thing in the 80s, the biggest thing that everybody kind of worried about was like AIDS was like kind of like the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that was the main thing I think, we worried about. I mean, we were careful, I guess, in that way. Um, we always like on our backstage on our right, we'd have, you always could get what you want on your rider backstage. And I always remember we had like a big box of like condoms. So that was like one thing I think we were pretty careful about is that we always kind of like were very careful about that kind of thing. Because back then, like I said, in that late 80s, AIDS was still pretty kind of new, only 4 or 5 old kind of, had been around only, like I said, for 5 years. So people really didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we were real careful. And I made it through all those times without having any um, children. So I was lucky, that I got through all those times kind of, without any kind of, like I said, without any crazy diseases but you know, we were pretty wild back then. I mean, not all the time, but I mean, it would be like I said, it'd be a day off where nothing was going on. to be sometimes where it was like crazy, you know. I mean, like the whole bus just like it was like a Roman orgy or something, you know. It
Yeah.
could get really crazy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I mean, things
And
that,
like I said, it was I mean, the girls were crazier than I mean, some of the girls were wilder than we were, you know what I mean? It wasn't like we were you know, I was like innocent, you know. Some of the girls back that are women were, like I said, were wilder than we were, you know.
yeah, I mean,
So
I kind of got the impression that like it was both genders were prone to a lot of partying and a lot of wild lifestyle.
yes,
It wasn't an
yeah.
environment where women were purely the victims of all of that stuff.
Oh, there was, if anything, it was a real like, it was, yeah, it was like both genders were really, at rock shows at least, it was pretty wild. Both genders were really, you know, up to get crazy, party, you know,
Hmm.
um, say crazy stuff. I mean, you know, girls would say stuff to me that I would, you know, sometimes girls would say stuff to me that I would never think about saying to a woman, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's crazy. I always think about it. I go, it's such a different time now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you told the story about how you jumped into the crowd and got in a scuffle with somebody. I mean, if that happened today, then there would probably be arrests and bad press and all of this. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I pulled one time. It's always funny. It's always Texas. There's crazy stories from. But one time, there was like, I thought it was a mannequin arm. Like I thought somebody was holding up like a mannequin arm
uh-huh,
in the crowd. So I grabbed a hold of it. I was pulling, and I thought they were pulling it. So I was like in a tug of war with somebody.
uh-huh.
Um, but it ended up being it ended up being a girl's prosthetic arm. And
Oh,
I didn't know, but I was like, that's why wasn't pulling off, because it's kind of attached to her body, like
yeah, yeah.
by like Velcro straps or something.
Hmm.
And I remember pulling it, finally pulled it off. And I was backstage. I had no idea I had this arm back there. I just thought it was like, I thought somebody just had a mannequin arm. And somebody came back, they go, Brent, you got to give this girl's arm back. It's her prosthetic. I went, oh my God, I felt so bad. So we
Oh,
brought her back, and I remember we gave her like T-shirts and autographed her, and she was happy. She came backstage, and of course, I gave her arm back, and I was very apologetic. But I was like, that was like crazy. I was like, oh my God, I pulled somebody's prosthetic arm up, you know, not knowing though, just thinking it was like, you know, somebody holding up like a mannequin.
yeah. I can see an accident like that happening, or a misunderstanding, whatever you want to call it. So it's hey, one thing I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you
but yeah,
about.
it was crazy. It was crazy, pretty crazy times back then.
Mhm.
Pretty wild.
All right, one thing I wanted to ask you about was not only did Faster have a very androgynous style, but you were one of the most
Mhm.
androgynous looking people on the scene. Did you feel that having a unique look benefited the band's visual style?
Um, Probably, you know, I can pull my hair back in like a ponytail, and I'd wear makeup, and a lot of my clothing was like velvet, you know, and just like our frills, and
Yep. Yeah,
um,
I love the
but a
outfit
lot of
that you
stuff I
wore.
was into.
Um,
What's
I,
that?
I was just gonna say I loved the outfit that you wore in the music video for "You're So Vain."
Yeah, yeah, that was like a velvet thing with like with kind of these black ruffly things sewed in, and
Yeah, and it was red. Just that whole video
yeah,
is kind of like a cross between the Sunset Strip and Moulin Rouge. Just I love it.
yeah. I think I got a poster on. Let me show you.
Oh, cool.
I think that's the same. I don't know if you can see it,
I can see it.
but that's the same outfit, I think. And it's got like it's like a velvet thing, and then it's got like it had some kind of black ruffles.
Hmm.
I think I'm wearing some kind of black glove there too, um,
Yeah, that's a cool picture.
but a lot of my, you know, when I was, like I said earlier, I was into punk, but I got into Hanoi Rocks, and they were a little bit, Michael Monroe was kind of androgynous, right?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the stuff, like my senior year of high school, a lot of the stuff that came out and Tammy and I, a lot of stuff we were into, I would say it's kind of post-punk or gothic.
Hmm.
We were playing with bands like Gene Loves Jezebel and else. I mean, I was into like Specimen and these like kind of post-punk, English post-punk
Okay.
goth bands, even The Cure and like Bauhaus. So I was into a lot of this. And even in high school, I really loved, even when I was into punk, I really loved like Boy George,
Hmm.
and I liked Dead or Alive, Pete Burns.
Okay.
And those guys were really androgynous looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Bowie. Bowie was pretty androgynous. So a lot of my heroes and bands that I was influenced by were kind of androgynous. So um, and New York Dolls too, they, dressed up with lipstick, and so that was kind of the thing back then for us, you know what I mean? That was
Hmm.
a lot of my hero, even Motley Crue, they had some kind of, that was like more black and leather. They still had this kind of makeup and androgynous thing happening.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically a direct copy of Hanoi Rocks visually.
Yeah. So all that stuff was a big influence, I think. And but yeah, a lot of people thought when we first came out, a lot of people thought I was a girl. So
I'll confess that when I actually, I had heard some of Faster Pussycat's music, but when I first saw a picture of you, it was in a biography of Guns N' Roses written by Paul Elliott. And when I saw the picture
uh-huh.
of you in the band, I actually thought that you and Tammy were both women.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had some when I toured, I had a few gay admirers too. I can remember one gay guy came and gave me like a love note, and I remember showing the guys in my band it, and they thought it was so funny. They told the guy, "Oh, Brent's just shy, but here's our hotel, and he's in this hotel room." So I remember I got back after the show to the hotel. I got a knock on the door. It was the same guy that had given me this kind of love letter earlier. And I was like, oh my God, get out of here. I'm on the phone with my girlfriend. But
Oh my
that was
God.
funny. This
I
guy,
actually,
it was funny because he's a pretty normal looking guy, and he gave me this letter. And it was before we played. And I was in the club, and I went into the men's restroom, and there was a big long mirror in front of the, at the urinal where you stand and go to the bathroom. There's a big long mirror.
mhm.
So you could, as you're, you know, doing number one, as you're at the urinal doing your business, you could see everybody coming in, behind you through the
Yeah.
door, coming into the bathroom. So I remember I'm at the urinal and I opened this letter, and it's like I say a love letter, but it was very sexually explicit. It was kind
Okay.
of like it's like a dirty letter. It's basically this guy telling me these things he wanted to do with me. Very explicit. And I was kind of, and like I said, I was pretty innocent when I first went on tour, but I was reading this letter and I was really in shock because I'm like, whoa, it's like I've never had like a dirty letter written to me by a guy, you know what I mean? So I'm reading this letter and I'm at the urinal and I've got my pants open, so I'm doing my business. And as I'm reading this letter, I'm in shock. And then I look up and the guy's coming into the bathroom, and I went, put it fucking zipped up real quick, and I ran out. And I remember running to the bus and showing the guys in my band. I go, oh my God, you guys, look at this. And it wasn't for me to make fun of him or anything. It was more like I was in shock, and I just wanted to show the guys in my band to go, look at this. And I didn't want to make fun. I actually was kind of mad at my guys in my band that kind of made fun of him, or tricked him. So they thought it was so funny. Like I said, they went to the guy and said, "Oh, Brent likes you. He's just shy and come to it." So yeah, that was crazy.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting thing.
I actually found an article where you were quoted about doing an AIDS benefit in Los Angeles at the time, and when the journalist, I think the journalist asked you, does it bother you trying to combat a disease that's just in the gay community? And what you told the journalist was, look, they're gay, but they're people. It's we, and this disease is a problem. I'm glad we're doing the concert. So
Yeah.
I
Well, yeah, I have, like I said, I never have had any problems with anybody being gay, and like I said, when at that time, AIDS was, um, straight people were getting AIDS too. So it wasn't just gay people. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe a majority of people that were getting it might have been gay, but I know that there was some straight people getting it too. So, and at the time, like I said, it was so new. At that time, I don't think people really knew a lot, about it
exa-
still.
exactly, like I think the
Uh,
journalist who was speaking to you probably assumed that she probably still thought it was the gay plague or something like that. And
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, when they first came out, it was thought to be that, but then, like I said, when we were first touring, it was more like, hey, anybody could get it. I mean, that's what we believed, anyways. We were just like, anybody could get it. Um, Wear condoms. If you're gonna mess around, wear protection. Um, I can't even remember Brett Bradshaw when he first got in our band. He got in our band on the third record,
mhm.
and my advice to him was like, "Hey, you're new, and there's gonna be a lot of girls and stuff. You shouldn't. You should really, like, if you're gonna mess around, you should, like, protect yourself, protect the girl, um, and don't get anybody pregnant. You're really young. It's your first tour, and there's going to be a lot of girls that just like you because you're in a rock band. They might not know you.
Yeah.
You should be careful." um, but it's funny because his very first tour, he ended up getting together with this girl and getting her pregnant. you know
Mhm.
so it just goes to show, I mean, things happen.
After the first record came out and did well, like what were your ambitions for the band after that? Like, did you and your bandmates and your label believe that you could achieve the commercial fame of Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses with your second record?
um, Well, I always tell people our first record came out the same day Guns N' Roses' first record came out.
That's right.
And I think their record, they spent 4 times as much money, and probably they were signed before us. So they spent about 4 times as much time and money on their record. And they were also, guys in Guns N' Roses were a little bit older than us, a couple of years, not much, but at that time, if you're 18 and if I'm 18 and Slash is 22, that's like for me, that's like a big difference, at that
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Now it's not much a big difference, but they had been out playing longer. So when their record came out, that was like set the bar. Like, that's what we have to, our record was cool and their record was cool, but it was phenomenal, and their record sold so much that kind of set the bar, what we needed to, like, kind of what we're up against. So our second record, we definitely, the playing is way better. The songwriting's better, playing's better, everything's better. We got better, but we had to, like I said, we made our second record knowing that we had to compete against Appetite for Destruction,
It's a tall order.
which to me, well, to this day, I think Appetite for Destruction is probably one of the all-time best rock. So,
Mhm.
um,
And it's also the best-selling debut
we
album of all time. So, I'm
oh
sorry.
yeah, we were lucky that we had like House of Pain second record,
Hmm.
and that got to be that got like a #1 video on MTV. So we had our kind of our big. So yeah, it was cool.
And I'm curious about finding, what was it like finding Michael Bay to direct that video?
At the time, he was huge. He wasn't as big yet. He was still pretty new.
Hmm. You guys kind of
Um,
had a hand in discovering him and catapulting him to where he is now.
yeah, well, because of that, I think that video helped him get other work, actually.
Hmm.
That House of Pain video was part of his resume to get other work. But he was cool. It was a great video. I mean, I remember him being very talented. I thought he did a great job with the storyline and the way he made it. And
Hmm.
it's a really beautifully done video, and the story is real sad. You know, I remember when Tammy had wrote the song, and then when he first saw the video, I remember he cried.
Really?
You know, yeah, when we first watched it, I remember Tammy teared up
Wow.
because that was a personal story about him growing up without dad being around.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, when he saw that video, he cried, and I just remember thinking, "Wow, you know, this is something." You know, really, it's not just another love. Every band at the time had a big, huge ballad, but it was like a cheesy love song.
Hmm.
But this was something different. You know what I mean? It's something like deeper meaning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seemed like,
Yep. It's what I call the dad song.
yeah. So it was great. And we had pretty decent success from the first record. Um, but I think our goal was basically on that second record, we have a gold record. Because the first record got close to gold, but it didn't go gold. So for us, that was kind of the trophy to get, you know,
Hmm.
was the gold record. It would have been nice to get a platinum, but for us, we were just like one step at a time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One thing at a time. And it did go gold, which was really cool. I remember finally I was able to bring my dad a gold record, and you know, hey dad, look, I made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Aw.
didn't go get the, I didn't go out and get the job. Went out and went for it. Here's my proof. You know, I made it. So
Aw, he must have been so proud.
he was. He had it up in his office, and yeah, he was real proud. And my mom still has one at her house. So I think being young though and naive, I kind of thought like we're I thought we were going to be Aerosmith or the Rolling Stones. I thought we would be, um, when you're young, I just thought, okay, after that second, I mean, the first record was one thing, but once we did the second record, I really thought like, I'm going to have a career
Mhm.
and I've got a record company, and the person at the record company is called A&R, and they're supposed to be like an artist development person. So they're supposed to work with you and see you through your career. And I'd look at these bands that were like on Elektra, like Motley had been on there a long time, Metallica.
Mhm.
They'd had bands like the Doors and the Eagles had been on there for since the 70s.
Yep.
So I really kind of thought it would last forever. You know what I mean?
I
So I was
did.
really shocked when after the third record and like grunge came out and they dropped all the LA stuff. I was kind of just in a state of shock, like very young and naive. I was like, I didn't know like, oh, it could all end. You know what I mean? I had no idea it could all end.
Yeah, I think that it probably, I mean, there's a chance that it would have continued had the grunge era not happened, but
Yeah.
it did happen. Which I mean, I'm kind of curious. Did anyone else in the band kind of foresee that happening, because you guys were in the unique position of having a Seattle native in your band who actually knew a lot of the people in the grunge scene that came. Um,
Well, for us, when grunge came out, we were still signed and touring and doing pretty well. Um, and we liked it. I mean, to us, it was just a new style of rock and roll from Seattle. It wasn't like we thought that both things could coexist. I mean, now they do kind of, but we thought they could have coexisted at the time. Um,
I wish that other journalists had had that attitude as well. I mean, I think they could have easily coexisted, but that's not how it
Well,
got
yeah,
framed.
cause I like, we were like, I was a big fan of Nirvana,
Mhm.
and when they came out, they were different. So I didn't think it was like competition. It was different enough that you could like this and you could also like this. You could like both,
Yeah.
or you could like one or the other. You know, it didn't really matter. To me, it was just like, okay, this is kind of a new cool style thing. And but it was the record company, it was all the record companies and MTV. They decided as a business, we're done with this and we're going with this.
Yep.
So it wasn't like the fans decided that, because all our fans were still there. The fans never went away. We were dropped and we came back to Hollywood and we played our biggest, after we were dropped from the record company, we played 2 nights at the Palace, sold out, like biggest crowd ever. And I mean, so the fans were there. They didn't go anywhere. But at the time you couldn't get, like, all those bands got, most bands got dropped and MTV stopped playing them. Even though the fans were still there, just they decided it was like I always say it was like you were a product. It was like you weren't like, I was really disappointed because you weren't looked at as a person or an artist. You were looked at like a bag of, I always say we were like a bag of Doritos, you know, to the record company MTV. We were nacho cheese, and Cool Ranch just came out and they decided we're going to promote Cool Ranch, you know?
Hmm. I know what you mean.
And um, and like going to the grocery store trying to find nacho cheese, even though you like it, all you see is Cool Ranch on the aisle. You know,
Yeah.
it's like people are forced; they couldn't get nacho cheese. That's what I felt like. I would say we were just a bag of chips. They didn't give a crap about us, or they didn't care if we had a family, or if we had house payments, or if we had a life,
Yeah.
or we could have had a new song that could have been like Stairway to Heaven. They didn't care. They just were like, we're done with this and we're going with that. And so it was really like, to me, disappointing and a wake up call, you know,
Yeah. And
business,
I'm sorry. Go
corporate business. It's like I said, it was like, we were like nacho cheese and they decided Cool Ranch came out. Even though you still like nacho cheese, you want to go buy nacho cheese, but you go to the grocery store and all it is like new flavors. You can't find your old favorite flavor, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and there is like this terrible irony to the fact that, you know, Kurt Cobain was the driver of that movement, and he worked so hard to make Nirvana the biggest band in the world, and he actually participated in slagging off the Sunset Strip bands a lot. I mean, Guns N' Roses was the main one, but
Did
just
he slag them off?
oh yeah, I mean,
Oh, he
just he
did. I didn't know that.
okay, but anyway, but again, like he worked so hard to be the leader of that movement, and you know, after a couple short years, it ended in his death. So
Yeah, it's sad. It was really sad, but you know, I didn't know, like I said, if he slagged it off or not, but I think if he did, it was just that was the kind of rebel thing to do. You know what I mean?
hmm
I think if he was still around, he'd probably be a fan of Guns N' Roses. I think if he was still around, he would be a fan of that stuff, of some of that music. You know what I mean? Some of it's undeniable. Even if you're the biggest grunge fan in the world, Guns N' Roses, like Appetite for Destruction, is just undeniable. You know, great album. You
yeah.
know,
hmm
even if you were like the biggest Nirvana fan, I think you could still be a fan of Guns GNR. You know, and even like I said, somebody like the singer for Green Day is a big Faster Pussycat first album fan because he recognizes that's cool. I think Kurt Cobain, you got to remember when he died, he was just 26,
Yeah. Yeah.
just a kid.
He was literally,
You know,
I
it's
think,
just a kid.
yeah, I think he was like literally just a couple months older than you. So,
Yeah, just a kid. So I don't hold anything against him. I think if anything, he was just a kid, and he probably, so if he did slag anything off, it was probably just because that was the thing to do. That was the cool thing to do, you know,
mhm. Yep.
at the time. But we were big, huge, we loved those bands, you know what I mean? And we never thought there was like a competition until the record company and MTV and record company literally decided that. They decided that more than the public. They kind of created that. And like the journalists, like maybe like Rolling Stone or some of these magazines, they just decided corporately, guys in suits in New York in a corporate kind of meeting in a boardroom decided that. No fans decided that, and the rock and roll community decided that. Is in like I said, in a boardroom decided that somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll admit that when I was younger, I kind of drank the Kool-Aid about it because I was a huge grunge fan, and Nirvana was my band when I was younger. I mean, I was born in 1989, so I was too little to experience that scene when it was happening. But when I became a teenager, I adored grunge. That was my thing.
Yeah,
but
it was great. I mean, even after Faster got stopped, I had Nirvana's. I can remember being at my house and 94, 95, Nirvana still was making music. Well, actually, he just died, right? I think when, 94, did he commit suicide?
April 1994, yes.
Yeah, but right around that time, I was blasting Nirvana. I love Nirvana, even though I never held it against them. I blame the record companies and MTV. But I never was upset, because I still, to this day, I think some of the grunge, I don't like all of it, but some of it I don't like, but some of it, like Nirvana, I was a huge fan of. To this day, Nirvana comes on the radio, I crank it up. And to be truthful, some of the stuff that was happening in our music scene was getting kind of lame too. I mean, it might have been time not to end totally, but it was definitely, some stuff was getting kind of lame, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was time to evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, it was time to kind of have new music and even, it was time for new stuff. I don't think it was time, and I don't think there were some bands that stuck it out, like Cinderella, or a band I guess some bands stuck it through, never broke up, and stuck it out through the tough times, but I never, like I said, never, to this day, I still like some of the grunge stuff, but even that scene kind of came and went, you know what I mean? Every scene, I think, has their beginning, their peak, and their downfall,
Yeah, and again, it's kind of, there is a big, it must have felt like such an anticlimax for Kurt to have gained that and then ended it with killing himself so quickly, but.
Yeah, it's really sad. Really sad. Mm-hmm. And drugs, I blame on mostly probably the drugs, sadly, what he was into is just such a tough thing. And I think he tried to get off of the get off of the drugs he was on, but I don't think he could. I don't think he had willpower, and I think that was a big thing that led to his death. Because I know he had just left. I think not too long before that, I think he had just left like a rehab facility or something.
He had. He had gone to a rehab facility called Exodus here in the LA area, and one of the he escaped from there and then took a flight to Seattle, and lo and behold, the person he sat next to was Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses on that flight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Duff ended up being one of the final people that he spoke with before he did that. And
drugs is a bad thing,
Yeah, and I have a sadness too that he did that, and I wish it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
But that's.
Yeah, and I always wonder what he created if he was still. He could have went on to evolve too and do so much great stuff, Mm-hmm. And like I said, I know in his older years he would have been able to recognize even the stuff he slagged off. Probably some of that stuff he probably appreciated now, grown to appreciate it.
Danny Goldberg, his manager, actually said recently in an interview that he gave, I think that if Kurt had lived, he and Axl Rose would have been best friends eventually. It's a small
Oh
club
yeah.
that they're in. So yeah.
Oh yeah, but definitely, it would have been friendly. I know Axl Rose, I think I read a story the other day. Axl Rose gave the drummer for Nirvana,
Dave Grohl.
and Dave Grohl gave Dave Grohl a really expensive guitar because Dave Grohl lent Axl his like sing throne or something when Axl had like a
Yes.
broken.
Yes, I saw that. And here's a cool thing. I said before that I had met Steven Adler a couple of times. I actually got to see Steven the day that he and Dave Grohl met for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Yep, and I have a picture of the two of them together with me, and it was so adorable because again, those were two bands that I'd always heard were great rivals and didn't like each other, blah blah blah, and they were acting like old friends, like they were
Yeah.
complimenting each other and saying how much they loved each other's music, and they'd always look forward to meeting. Like it
Well,
was
a lot of that rivalry too was the press pushing it. I
yeah.
mean, a lot. Like I said, I definitely, there'd be no doubt in my mind if Kurt Cobain was alive today, he'd be friends with Axl and Duff, and he would appreciate, he would appreciate fast all that music.
Hmm.
And maybe not all of it. I mean, he'd probably have some favorites and some that he didn't like so much. Because, like I said, even me, some of the stuff from my so-called scene, I wasn't a big fan of all of it.
Hmm.
Some bands I love, but there were other bands that I would think just kind of cheesy or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I like that article because Axl is good friends with Dave Grohl, and it's cool. Yeah, and like I said, there'd be no doubt that Kurt Cobain and Axl would probably be best buddies.
Yeah, it's actually early on before the quote unquote feud happened. Axl was a huge cheerleader for Nirvana. He wore a Nirvana hat
Yeah.
in one of Guns N' Roses videos, and he tried really really hard to get Nirvana to play for his birthday. I mean, they weren't able to do it for
Uh-huh.
whatever reason, but just he loved them. And so
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
but seeing Steven and Dave Grohl get along so well was adorable. Kind of.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Axl too was always. I told somebody he was always a big cheerleader of Faster Pussycat too. He he was at our. I said he was at our very first show in the audience doing his little snake dance.
Oh, cool! Oh my gosh, I love
Um,
that. I love that dance.
he also helped us get signed. I think Axl helped us get signed. He hooked us up with their manager, Vicky Hamilton,
Hmm.
and Vicky helped get us signed.
I love
Um,
Vicky. Yeah, I've met her too. Just
yeah,
couldn't be a sweeter woman. She's wonderful.
yeah, she is cool. And I was telling her when our second record did come out, Axl got an advance copy from his record company.
Hmm.
And I remember before it actually came out, I mean, it was just about to come out, but he got an advance copy. And me and Tammy were going into a club on Sunset Strip. I think it was called English Acid, I think, the club. And Axl came up to Tammy and said, I got a copy of your second, I got an advance copy of your second record. He goes, great. So he was like, Axl, you know, he was always nice to me. I always got along with him good and had a very good, he had negative, like bad reputations sometimes. As far as I went, he was always nice to me, like I said, and he was always a big cheerleader and big supporter of the band.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of. I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I've heard from a lot of people just how sweet and easygoing you are, and how well you get along with with the people around you. So it's.
Yeah, I was always known as kind of a nice guy.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very people oriented, so I'm not really. I always like to meet fans and like I'd all go out and meet people,
Hmm.
sign out, I always liked signing autographs. I like traveling, meeting people from different countries. And one thing about me too is I've always liked food, any kind of food. So like wherever I go, I'm pretty happy, especially because I'm somewhere new and I'm trying some kind of new food,
Uh-huh. Like,
whether it's like Italy or like Spain or Japan, I'm fine with anything, I'm not shy and I'm pretty brave when it comes to trying something new. So,
mhm.
um, so I've always had, and I don't like being alone. To tell you the truth, I don't like being alone. So I like being around people. So I've always had, for the most part, a pretty good reputation about being nice, I think. Um, I remember, I think I was out on tour, I think like, it might have been with Faster Pussycat or with LA Guns. I was touring with one of the bands. And then one time somebody said something, they said I was a jerk, but I think the guy that came up to me, I was on the side of the stage, I was talking to some girl. I think this guy came up to me and he'd been drinking. He was talking to me like in my space with like beer breath, like cigarette and beer breath. And I was just like, and I think I finally said something like, hey, he was like talking and interrupting in a conversation. I think I finally went to the guy and goes, hey, I'm talking to someone right now. Can you give me a second? I think that was a mean, but I remember the guy wrote on the internet, I met Brent, he's a jerk. I think that was the one time. And I went, yeah, because you were drunk and you had beer and cigarette breath. I was trying to talk to some cute girl and you're like interrupting my,
Yeah.
and probably spitting in my face. But yeah, so I mean, for the most part, I'm pretty, I think, agreeable,
Hmm.
for the
Good.
most part.
Nice. You said before that you got on with Axel. Okay, that kind of makes me curious. Do you still have any like are there still any people from that scene that you're still friends with or in contact with?
Uh, well, I talked to my bandmates. I talked to Tammy. I mean, Tammy like called me like a month back or something out of just the blue. I think I talked to the guys in my band mostly. But no, I don't really. I'm trying to think. There's nobody that I really from that back then. I'm not really friends with any of those guys. Like not close enough to call them.
Okay.
So
You
nobody
know,
I could think of. Except, like I said, the guys in my band.
okay. While we're on the subject, if you can't answer this, it's totally okay. But I think that your fans are kind of curious. Do you know where Mark Michaels is?
Oh, we've tried to find him. Um, a few years. It's been quite a while back. It might have been like I don't know. It might have been like 10 or 15 years ago. At one point, like a detective called me. Somebody hired a detective to try to find him, and the detective couldn't find him.
Really?
Um, so I think he's probably not. I don't think he's here in this world with us anymore. Sadly, that's my feeling because he's been like, you can't find him like on Facebook or anything. As far as I know, I've looked.
I'm very
Um,
sorry to hear that. Uh,
you know,
I
the he lived in New York for a while after when he got out of our band, like on our second record, or no, after the second record, in between the second record and the third record, he got out of our band and he lived in New York for a while. And then I know he was like involved in some drugs, which is not totally good for your mental, you know. Then I heard he had gotten into an accident, some kind of got hit by a car or something. And then the last time I heard, well, then one time a few times we had seen him, but way back then. One time we were playing in Atlanta and he had walked in and I saw him walk into our show. And it freaked us out because he didn't say anything to us. He just walked in. So I thought, what's he going to do? Is he going to do something like mess with us, at the show?
yeah.
And then at one point we were in North Hollywood rehearsing, and he was out listening out. There were train tracks close to the rehearsal place we rehearsed with Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And he was out on the train track. Somebody had saw him, and he was like kind of listening or looking or listening to us.
Mm-hmm.
But that was way back, like around our second or third record.
Okay.
And then, but since then, I mean, and that was a while ago. I mean, so for a long time, nobody's heard. And the last time somebody had seen him, they said that he was in LA. He was asking where, like, like where's CBGB's? Like he was in LA walking around asking where New York Club was.
That's not a good
And
sign.
no. So they were really shocked. They said that it was really sad that he was kind of out of his mind because he was asking for a New York club and he's walking around LA. That was the last time I had heard that anybody had seen him. And since then, people have looked for him, but he, I think, then somebody else said he came back to Las Vegas and that he was staying at one of his like cousin's house or a relative out here, and the people had to kick him out because they came home and he had taken ketchup and mustard and spread it all over their like living room wall, like painted like a mural. And then they said he was threatening, like they had like a 2-year-old or a toddler in the house, and he was threatening the toddler with a knife or something. So he sounded pretty like gone, you know.
Yeah, this is all kind
Like
of adding up to the fact that he sounds, I mean, I don't want to say anything disrespectful to him, but it sounds like he was a troubled person,
well,
unfortunately.
yeah, mental illness, but I think he had mental illness, and I think that he was using heroin, and I think he might have been using. Sometimes people do drugs because they have a mental illness. They're like almost like self-medicating,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes I believe the drugs could lead to mental illness. You know,
Uh-huh.
so either way, I think either he was doing it because he had some mental illness or they were causing mental illness. But so many people I know throughout the years have OD'd on heroin that if he was using and he had any kind of mental illness, he could have very easily, being, messing around with that and being in those situations and being around other like drug dealers or home areas, or he could have OD'd, or he could have done. I mean, some ways that the drugs kill you, whether it's some kind of like hepatitis or ODing or anything, or being killed in a drug deal. I really think he's gone, and it's only because, like I said, nobody could find him. I would love it to see him pop up somewhere, but I think I would have seen him. It's been really, he's been just MIA for like 25 years at least, something like that, maybe more.
Well, again, I'm sorry to hear that. I know that he was your friend once upon a
That's sad.
time, and that is
Oh
sad.
yeah, he when he first moved from Las Vegas to LA, he actually moved in with me at my dad. When I was living with my dad, he actually moved in there and lived with me there. So yeah, I loved Mark, and you know, even when he got out of the band, we always left a spot for him. We told him, hey, go home and get yourself clean, check in a rehab, and there's a spot for you to come back to the band. But he never did that. I think he kind of chose the drugs and that lifestyle over being in our band.
That sucks for him and for you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, anyway, just on that note, what was it like?
Oh, Nathan, I'm doing an interview. Sorry, my son's doing a pencil sharpener. That being said, though, if he is around, or if anybody does know, we would all love to know what happened to him, or where he is or what happened to him. Because it is kind of weird that like we don't really know what happened. He's just kind of disappeared off the planet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I find anything, I mostly do research for my interviews and for pictures here and there. But if I find anything, I'll certainly send it your way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. On that note, um, when Mark initially got arrested and kicked out of the band, what was it like for you losing him? I mean, was it sort of like the beginning of the end for the band?
No. Well, it happened. We were playing on our second record. It just came out, so we were touring on our second record, and we are doing like club tours. We were up. We were in the running for. There was like 5 bands that were in the running to go on tour with Motley Crue, us being just one of them. And then Mark got arrested. So at the time, yeah, we thought it might be the end, but we were lucky that we had a really great manager named Warren Entner at the time, and he was managed Quiet Riot, so he knew Frankie Bonelli. So as soon as Mark got arrested, he called Frankie and told Frankie, "Here's some plane tickets to fly out to like, I think it was Minneapolis, somewhere in Minnesota, I think, Frankie's first show." But our manager bought him tickets, and he said, "Go down, here's some money, go down to Tower Records and pick up their 2 first records and just listen to them on the plane flight." So we didn't miss a show. I mean, even the night when Mark got arrested that night, our opening band, Danger, I think was the band, their drummer played drums with us.
Oh.
So we never missed one show. And Mark was arrested, and we called his parents to deal with it. But we didn't kick Mark out. What happened was, because he got arrested, we were forced to play with Frankie. And like I said, we told Mark, "Go home, take care of your court stuff, deal with, any of that legal stuff. Go get into rehab, and you could come back to the band." So we didn't really kick him out. He chose, though, when he went back to LA, the only thing we heard was him kind of talking bad about us. And he kept, of course, doing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of made that choice,
Yeah.
whether to be in the band or not.
Which again really sucks.
Yeah, he kind of made the choice.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for all 5 of us
Yeah.
that he did that, but
But
hey,
so we got Frankie. So Frankie came out, and on top of that, we beat out like 5 or 6 other bands. We got the Motley Crue tour.
Nice.
But luckily, our manager had to do a lot of work to like say, "Hey, this guy got arrested. None of the other guys are doing drugs. They haven't missed a show. I got Frankie Bonelli from Quiet Riot," and Motley guys knew Frankie Bonelli already. Okay. And I think Eric was friends with Nikki Sixx a little bit already.
Yeah, so I know that Eric was actually. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Eric was living with Nikki for, I think, a while.
Yes, when I was doing a research for this interview, I read that in an interview with Eric.
Yeah. So, and we had the same record label, Electro Records. So we got really lucky. We got that tour, and that really helped us, make that second record. I mean, that worked in our favor to make that record because of the Motley Crue tour. I mean, that was a big part of the reason we were able to go, get the gold record, I think,
Nice. Like, what was it like?
I always tell people a little bit of a love relationship with Motley Crue. I love them for helping us and touring with them. And I like Nikki. I always was even when I was in high school, before I was ever in Faster, I was a big fan of Nikki Sixx. I remember painting a portrait of him. But I always hated, well, I don't hate him, but I always was really pissed that, the whole Vince Neil, killing Razzle from Hammer Rocks.
Yes,
To
that's kind of
me,
why
that was a big,
I'm so I've never been a huge Motley Crue fan. Just I love Hanoi Rocks,
yeah,
and I still can't believe that freaking
yeah.
accident. But go on. I'm sorry.
What pissed me off mostly about it is even after that, I've seen Vince Neil get in a car out here in Vegas, like stone cold drunk, like unbelievable. You know what I mean? To me, like he can't even see straight, and he gets into a car, and his girlfriend's fine. She's in high heels, walking perfectly, and she lets him drive, and I'm just like, to me, it's just like a little bit, like I said, I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Motley because of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I know that
And
he
I
went to prison for drunk driving again within the past 10 years. I didn't know that he was doing it again and again, though, on a regular basis.
Oh
You
yeah, I
really
saw
didn't know that?
him. Yeah, well, when they played the joint a few years back, it's probably been I don't know, 5 or 6, I don't know. They played the joint out here. They had a residency, and he stayed after. Like I said, he was seeing double. He couldn't even walk a straight line, and he got in the car. And I was kind of pissed. And
No kidding. He freaking got someone killed and then keeps doing all
yeah,
that.
so yeah,
I I won't go on and on about Vince, but I feel you though. I love Hanoi Rocks, and I just that accident.
and I wish I wish nothing, but good for Motley Crue, meaning that I I have love for them in a way, what they helped us do, without them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do, I think. But I don't like certain stuff they did, like, I thought telling the fans this is our last tour, you gotta buy tickets. I feel it's kind of cheating fans.
Yeah.
Um, when it's bullshit, when they're gonna tour again. Telling fans, oh, this is our last tour, I think it was a cheap way to sell tickets. And then when I saw them at the joint and Def Leppard at the joint. Def Leppard was great. Didn't play the tracks. They were singing and playing, and they sounded to me like they rehearsed. And to me, that shows that they care about the fans. But when I saw Motley, none of them were close to a microphone, and all these vocals were coming out. So all the vocals were on tape. And to me, it's like karaoke. It's like, it's like karaoke. And I'm just like, why am I paying? I could go to a karaoke box if I want to hear like all the vocals on tape.
Well,
So,
here's what I think about the whole lip syncing
so
thing.
I don't like that. I mean, to me, it's like, I'd rather, like I said, you could hear all these like Dr. Feelgood. It's like, he's when Dr. Feelgood. You hear like 10 vocals, and Nikki is here, his mic's over here hanging. Vince Neil is not, he's putting his mic out to the crowd. Mick Mars is nowhere near Mike. And
Yeah,
it's like, where are all these? And there's like 20 vocals coming out. I'm like, this is crap. I mean, I felt like, oh, actually, I got a free ticket, but I told somebody, I go, I'd be really pissed if I would have had to pay for this ticket. And I remember watching like 2 songs and leaving because it was just like crap. And that's just being honest. And that being said, I wish them nothing but the best. I mean, I wish that they would rehearse. I wish that they would, I wish Vince, um, whatever he has to do, stop drinking. I wish he'd, work out, diet, whatever, lose weight. I'd be happier, nothing but happier if they came out sounding great and looked great. You know what I mean?
yeah, and like as far as the like, I'm I guess I'm
And
a little smarter.
I wish them good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wish them good luck too, but at the same time, whenever I see how famous they are and how well known, I have a bit of a pain in me because I would much rather people know about Hanoi Rocks or about
Yeah,
Faster Pussycat or a couple of other bands from the 80s. But instead we have Motley Crue, who are basically a combination of Hanoi Rocks and Kiss. And like you
yeah,
said,
yeah.
they're lip syncing. And here's what I think of the lip syncing thing. I understand if pop stars do it. Like, I understand that Madonna and
Yeah,
Britney Spears, if they're going to do all that dancing, there's no way they're going to have
right,
great vocals when they're doing that.
right,
But for a rock band, it makes a lot less sense because you can still play and sing or just sing and do whatever. Like, I've seen
yeah,
the way Vince performs. He does not physically need to a, a backtrack in order to do it. He could
right.
easily sing, but he chooses not to. So,
Yeah, and hearing all that, it didn't sound good to me. It doesn't sound like a real rock concert. It sounds like you're at karaoke, or it just sounds bad to me. It sounds like it sounds like they're playing to tracks, like and like I said, I saw that was at the Joint at the Hard Rock, and then I saw like a year later I saw, and the reason I say Def Leppard because when I saw Def Leppard, it was just like, this is how a band should sound. You know what I mean? They
mm-hmm.
sounded like they actually took time and rehearsed, and you could hear them. They're on the mic, and you could hear it was them singing. You know what I mean? When one
Yes,
guy sang close and then go like that, you could hear it. You could hear it's real.
yes, they
And
were
for
actually playing as opposed to playing along with a
the track,
pre-record. So,
yeah, yeah. And so I was really disappointed. And then, like I said, and then seeing Vince get in the car and still drinking, just kind of like, I have a hard, like I said, it gives me a, like I said, the best thing I could say is like a love-hate relationship with, I
well,
mean, not Henry, but Motley. And I saw something recently, I saw somebody interviewed Phil Lewis from LA Guns, and something about Vince, he said something about Vince Neil, he goes, oh yeah, isn't that the guy who killed Razzle? So I think Phil Lewis is still pissed. He goes, yeah, that guy killed my friend Razzle from Hanoi Rock. So I
yeah,
think even Phil Lewis is still like been out of shape about it.
yeah, I
You
don't
know,
blame him. It's
yeah.
ugh.
Which like I said, I can understand.
After Whipped came out, of course, that dropped right in the middle of grunge and everything. What
Mhm.
was touring? What was touring like during that time?
Um, I think it was pretty good in the beginning. Um, we toured. I mean, we opened up for Ozzy Osbourne, and that was funny because that tour was his. That was like 93, I think, 92, 93. That was supposed to be his last tour. It's called the No More Tours tour, you know.
Yep.
Um, we opened up for Ozzy. I think we opened up for Kiss.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Motley Crue are not the only offenders of that.
yeah, right. I know. It was pretty good until like at one point, like I said, the record companies just stopped, and MTV. It was just like at one point, I think during that tour, it was like during that when I think the record companies and MTV and I think even the radio stations all just decided, you know, oh, your nacho cheese, we're done. We're promoting Cool Ranch Doritos. So I think it was kind of frustrating at some point, and then the thing that made me mad is we were out touring, and the record company dropped us while we are touring. I'm thinking like, yeah, it's kind of like they could have at least let us like. It didn't cost them any money. I mean, at that point we were doing our own tour, supporting ourselves out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like it would have. I mean, it seems like they would at least let us kind of finish touring and let us sell records. It would have been better for them
Mm-hmm.
to sell records. They would have made more money, but they dropped us like during the tour. So it's pretty bad. I mean, I remember at that point, it was one of the lowest points of my life where it's like, you're on tour and you're dropped and you're just like, my life's over, you know?
Aw.
And there's like the realization that like, well, you know, me being young and naive and thinking I'm going to have this like musical career forever or be signed to, Elektra for, more records just being over abruptly. Um, I was definitely sad. At one point, I was pretty angry,
Hmm.
being young and angry. I mean, I remember at one point even fantasizing about going into New York, the office in New York, and like, you know, blowing up the building or whatever. I don't know what I was thinking, but like, you're angry because people like, they don't care about, it's like now you're like messing with my life. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I've got like this is what I do. I could have, and I remember, I think too, I thought, man, I could have went to college. I could have joined the Air Force. I could have went and became, a veterinarian and been been an animal doctor, and I thought about all these things I could have done, but I was like, I gave my life to, at that point I said, I devoted my life to this, and it's like, it's gone.
Yeah. And
So,
like after like when you got dropped though, did you think about possibly like going back to school or, you
oh, I
know?
did well. I came home and I had bought a house. I was like the only guy in the band that had bought a house. So everybody had kind of a nest egg from the money they made in the band,
Mhm.
but I had put my money into a house. So I didn't have like a big nest egg to like live off of. So as soon as I got home, I started working like various jobs,
Okay.
um, which was good for me. It kind of brought me back down to earth, meaning like grounded me, and just I came back to reality pretty like right away.
Mhm.
And also because everything I had from Faster Pussycat was tied up in this house, and there was no way I was gonna like just lose the house, because to me the house was like not only the gold record, but to me that house was kind of a trophy of what I had done in Faster Pussycat.
Yeah.
So I got to work right away while the other guys didn't. The other guys kind of just lived off their little like savings and stuff for a few years, but I
Mhm.
went and got to work right away, and then I went back to school. I went to community college. I took Japanese language courses,
Nice.
and I learned how to read and write, speak Japanese. So I did that for like, I studied at college for about 3 or 4 years. Um, and I did some really cool. I went and started working in the movie industry, and I got to do some really cool stuff. I um, learned how to like do camera work, and I started working in the camera department.
Nice.
And yeah, I started doing pretty good. And then around the time, like around 1999, 2000, um, I started getting back into music. I mean, I was always playing, even when Fast Pussycat was broken up, I was working. I always was playing in little bands, like just any band. I was playing clubs still, but just like unknown bands, like Fizzy Bangers, or I had a band called Manic 50. And I had called Deluxe. So I had these little unsigned bands. I play clubs. So I played music, but I was working during the day, and then I would go to school at night, or I'd play music.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, around 1999, 2000, I met Phil Lewis. I started playing with him in a band called Liberators.
Cool.
And we started playing kind of professionally again. And around that time, all the camera stuff went digital. So I was working with film, and everything went digital. And there was a huge actor strike around that time.
Mm.
So it was kind of a good time for me to get out of like the movie industry and get back into music. And
Mhm.
then since 2000, I got into LA Guns. Then after that, I got into LA Guns for a few years. And then I got back into Faster Pussycat for a few years. So I got back into music, and then moved out here in 2004 and played out here. So basically, I've been playing music again since 2000,
Okay.
pretty much even out here, I've been consistently playing like the casinos since I moved out here, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next. I mean, you've still been able to make a living out of it out there, which is
Mm.
fantastic. And of course, I know that times are or weird right now with COVID, but as soon as COVID is over, is that what you're going to be doing in the future as well?
Well, I've been lucky. Well, we were shut down in like March. I was playing on the strip about twice a week, and then that gig got shut down in March, and then all of April I pretty much stayed in my house,
Mm,
and then April, June, July. Well, since July, Vegas kind of halfway opened,
mm,
so I've been able to play a little bit. It hasn't shut down all the way for me. I've been able to play on the strip a few times, probably about once a month on the average. And then recently, probably about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, they shut down again.
okay.
But luckily, though, I've been like, well, all my other friends who tour have like been home all year. I've been able to play a little bit, you know.
Good. Good.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I can
but
see.
like I said, it's kind of shut down again. But I'm hoping it's gonna at some point. I think it will open back up.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I think I heard Dr. Fauci say that by September, if people are wearing masks, then we can have stadium events again. Like people will have to mask and
I
perhaps
agree.
use it. Yeah, exactly. I really, fingers crossed, that's going to be what's happening. On a personal note, eh, uh, in the mid 2000s, you became a father.
When did I first? Katrina's born 2005. Yeah, yeah, and then Nathan 2000. When was Nathan born? 2009. Yeah, so I have a daughter and a son now.
Cool.
But yeah, that's something new for me. And what was good about it is it was actually planned, you know,
Okay.
which is amazing, you know.
Mhm.
Um, we moved out here, and um, at some point we always decided my wife and I, we had decided, that we want kids.
Mhm.
And we just thought, after I moved out here, it was just kind of the time. And she had stopped using, we just planned it, meaning like, let's have a kid. And then she just stopped using birth control. And it just happened. You know what I mean? It's like, first one happened and we were having, it was a girl. And then second one, um, we had planned too. We're just like, we want another kid and we want a boy. So my wife made sure she fed eight and a few other things. She had this theory about how to have a boy,
Well, it worked.
this yeah, it worked. Yeah. Which is amazing. But yeah, so I'm happy. And then for us, that was like, okay, I think that's enough, so kind of what we wanted, a boy and girl.
Mhm.
And they've been really cool. My daughter looks a lot like me.
She does. I've seen a couple of pictures, and she kind of has some of your affectations too, like the way she looks at the camera. Just, it's really
Yeah,
cute.
yeah, she's funny. My people say she's my mini me,
Yes, exactly. She is.
and
And
they're cool. It's they're funny too because they're different personalities, and when kids grow up, they have their own opinions, and it's just real interesting, and I learn a lot from my daughter because like I said, growing up, when I grew up, um, there's so much new stuff. Now I have to ask her, like, you know, LGBTQ, like what the heck is Q, and A plus AI or IA, like what is the I? I have to ask her all these things,
yep.
you know, she's funny, but she's very, I don't know what they call them, millennial or something. I don't know. She's just funny though. She's very open-minded and very like, very I don't know, just funny, She's definitely has her own opinions, and
Hmm.
interesting, very smart,
Yeah, and I guess she's heading into her teenage years now if she was born in
Oh
'05.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, she's heading into her teenager, yeah.
So.
So
You
gotta
look
watch
thrilled
out.
about that.
God is fair, God is fair.
Well, anyway, so what are some of your ambitions for the future? Like personal, professional?
Um, well, I'm looking forward to getting, when I could get a vaccine, I'm looking forward to getting a vaccine
You and me
for
both.
coronavirus. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm a vaccine. Um,
Same here. Just the minute I am in line to have one, just I want one. I completely believe in the science of it. Just I think
I
that,
do too. I believe in the science. I also, um, I've been studying a lot too. I've been listening to these virologists. They have like a podcast on YouTube,
mhm.
and I've been since the beginning of this pandemic. I've been listening to these virologists talk about it because it kind of like calmed me down a little bit. Like the more I know about it, I'm the type like I want to know everything about how the virus works. I want to know everything about how the different vaccines work. And so one of the guys is like he's a professor and a virologist professor at Columbia. And
Mm.
his podcast, and he always has different people talking, and they speak just science. And so I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big believer in science, and the new technology too is like they're only using a piece of, they're not even using any of the virus, they're only using the tiny piece of the RNA that makes a protein that can't replicate and it can't really hurt you. I
Nice.
know some people have allergic reactions, but I think that's way better than getting, you know, having an allergic reaction would be way better than getting coronavirus and having to go to the hospital, I think.
Exactly. And when people try to use the allergic reactions as an excuse, because I've talked with people who are anti-vaxxers,
Yeah.
and when people
Yeah.
try to say, oh, I heard about these allergic reactions, I'm like, people are allergic to bananas and strawberries,
Anything. Yeah. Yeah.
but does that mean that since some people are allergic to them, they're terrible on the whole, and that we need to ban everyone in the world from ever eating them again? No,
Well,
just
it's not that. I mean, there's the allergic reactions are kind of not that many. They're few, and there's also a
yep,
cure for that. If you get a allergic reaction, they have the EpiPens. They could give you an EpiPen, and you're fine. So there's a
exactly.
cure for that, but there's not really a cure for the coronavirus. You know what I mean? There's not a. If you get the coronavirus, there's no sure cure for that yet.
Yep,
And
another good point.
I tell one of my friends, I'm not super worried about it, but I don't want to take a chance. I don't want to get it. And I am at that age where it's not, I'm not totally, it's not totally dangerous, but it could be either way. I'm at that age range so I'm looking forward to getting that. I'm looking forward to it being over, and I think, yeah, September, probably,
Yeah.
hopefully. All along, I kind of knew that, I had that I pretty much predicted, I had told one of my friends, like back in April, I said, they're going to have a vaccine by Christmas. I predicted it pretty good. They got it right before Christmas. But I said, with all the stuff they're doing, the Operation Warp Speed and the money they're putting in companies, they're going to get a vaccine pretty quick. So I knew that. So I'm looking forward to that. What else? Looking forward to. I think once that happens, we'll all be able to go out and play again. So that's
Yeah,
going to be a good thing.
thank goodness. I live in Los Angeles, and I know a lot of musicians around here, and they're very impatient to start playing again. So
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
soon.
So it's going to be good. And like I said, I'm really happy they got the vaccines are coming out, and I think the science is really good. The vaccines, I mean, two ones that are out now, they don't even use they don't even use the virus at all. In the past, they've actually used the virus and inactivate it and then give it to you, but now they don't even use the virus. So there's no chance of, I mean, there's a chance of maybe getting an allergic reaction, but there's no chance of getting coronavirus from the vaccine. There's no chance of it replicating.
Okay.
So, and I've been, like I said, I follow the science, and you know, and I always tell people that are anti-vaxxers, I'm like, everybody, any of my friends that are anti-vaxxers, I say, you have all had vaccines when you're little kids, you know?
Yes,
And,
exactly.
and not only have they all had vaccines, but I go, polio is not even a thing anymore because of vaccines. It, you know, back 50 years ago, kids were getting paralyzed and crippled because of, you know, couldn't walk or had to walk on crutches all their life because of polio. And it would kill people, or people had to live in iron lungs. And I
Hmm.
go, because of vaccines, polio is not a thing anymore. So,
Yep.
you know, I do believe in science. So I'm a big fan of science. So I'm pro-vaccine, and I'm looking forward to that. What else am I looking for? I've started exercising now for the new year, and
Cool.
getting, you know, healthy. And like I said, just kind of looking forward to all that, you know.
Hmm.
And I think we live in really interesting times. So I think with this, I think a lot of things are going to change in the next few years. You know, things are changing so quick because of technology, and even us being able to do this interview is kind of a new thing.
Yes.
So a lot of cool things are happening. So I think it's a lot of exciting stuff, you know, happening.
Hmm.
We live in a very interesting and exciting time, I think, you know.
Me too. Just
Yeah.
and again, I'm glad we were able to do this. I mean, under normal circumstances, I probably would have tried to drive out there and like interview you after a show or whatever, but you know, I'm so grateful I get to have you on with this though.
Well, it's really cool.
Okay. All right. So wrapping up, just a couple more questions.
Sure.
Which of your albums that you've been involved with has been your favorite? Do you have one?
Mm. Well, the third one is really great. When I listen to it, like on a stereo in my car, really loud, it's really awesome. Some
Hmm.
of the songs and the songwriting. I mean, I told a friend it's really different because so many different styles. It's a little bit hard for maybe. I told one of my friends that I feel like it's kind of beyond. We were kind of better beyond some people. You know, it's like too advanced for some people, but that one's really fun and interesting because there's so many different styles, and the playing on it is really great. Um, that one's really a great album. But the second one was really a lot more cohesive. Sounds like one band, one style.
Hmm.
Where I think the third record sounds like you could hear everybody's influences a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, second one's really good, being cohesive. Third one might be my favorite, but first one is very, like I said, almost punk. It's so raw, and it's first one's good because it's a really good representation of the Sunset Strip 1987. Like if you want to hear 1986, 87, Sunset Strip, sleaze rock, Sunset Strip, that record really is perfect representation of it, I think. So I think that one is great too. Um, they're all, like I said, they're so good in different ways, you know.
Hmm.
The first one, playing is not the greatest. The writing, it's kind of amateur, but it's really cool because it really sounds, it captures a time, you know, and it really
Exactly.
captures a time, and it captures a scene
Hmm.
more than I think almost any of those records that came out at that time. But even though I think Appetite is a way better record production wise and song, everything, playing, production, song, I think our first record might capture the strip, Sunset Strip, maybe even more than Guns N' Roses' first record, you know.
Hmm.
Um, then our second record, like I said, is really like our answer, I think, to Appetite. So it really sounds like one band, one style, very hard, very more. You could hear the growth, you know. Um, But then like I said, the third record sounds great. The one thing when I listen to the third record, Eric, our bass player, his playing on it is so great. His sound and his playing bass on it. When I turn it up real loud in the car, it's just, to me, I just go, wow, Eric is really, he's so good on it, you know?
Aw, nice.
Really great. Eric is, on that third record, Eric, I think is the bass on it is definitely by far the strongest. I think Eric was really great on that record. And I didn't realize it until recently. I played the record in my car and it's, wow, it's so good, you know?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and I really
so,
and Tammy's got like such a distinctive voice as well. I mean, that was one thing that
mhm.
stuck out to me when I first started listening to Faster Pussycat. Just, what not to go on and on, but what did you think the first time you heard Tammy sing? Like,
He's got a unique voice, and Tammy's definitely unique. Even his lyric writing is like, he's one of a kind, you know?
mhm.
Um, Tammy's voice, I think for some people, it's kind of an acquired taste, you know?
Yeah,
It's, I don't think his voice is like, I wouldn't say it's super commercial, you know what I mean?
yeah, like,
So I think it's an acquired taste, meaning I think you're gonna either like Tammy's voice, you kind of love it, or you hate it. You know, it's kind of, it's not like one of those voices like commercial. You know, there's people, I think there were bands like where the singer sounded way more commercial, meaning very safe or like predictable. You know, um, and but I think Tammy, he's really great at, like, his lyrics is clever. You know, I listen to his lyrics, are really super clever. His phrasing and melodies are very clever too. Um, he's really, yeah. So I think he's definitely like unique. And I was thought, because he's not commercial, I was kind of thought like, if we had a commercial singer, we could have maybe been bigger. You know, like we went gold and stuff, but we didn't go like millions or platinum, because I don't think he has that kind of voice like for big, huge commercial success, you know?
yeah, like the Bon
Which,
Jovi type voice.
yeah, with like a Bon Jovi, even like a band, yeah, like Bon Jovi, exactly, is way more commercial, safer, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I think there's something cool about being a little dangerous and more unique and not being everybody's cup of tea. I think there's something cool about that. I think it gives us a little bit of I guess you would just say uniqueness, a little bit more underground, more, you know, not being the commercial success. We're the more, in a way, it's kind of cooler to be a little bit more underground, you know?
Hmm. You know,
Yeah.
the track that I think that Tammy's voice sounds so uniquely suited to is House of Pain, because his voice like has such an edge to it and such attitude, but here he is on this ballad singing about his father um and what a
Well,
and basically being abandoned by his father, and it still fits so well, you know?
he dug deep on that one. And when we first wrote that song, um, Greg came in with the guitar riff, and Tammy had wrote some lyrics, and they weren't what it wasn't not House of Pain. It was something totally different. And we kind of told him, these lyrics aren't good, go back and rewrite it, you know?
Yeah.
So House of Pain was a song that he went home and said, I got to make this great. And so somewhere he dug deep and came up with a true story. And that's why I think House of Pain became a hit, because it wasn't just some commercial ballad. It was something real. It was more real. I think you could hear the realness and the truthfulness in the way he sings it, because it's personal, you know?
Yep.
And that's what I think makes that song. But he really went back and dug deep and came up with something great, I think. And but yeah, so out of the three records, I think third one would be my favorite, only because A lot of people don't know about it. It sold the least out of all 3 records. So I think there's a lot of people that probably never, there's still probably a lot of people that never have heard the 3rd record. So that's one cool thing. And then 2, I think it's kind of neat. You could hear everybody's influences on it, you
Yes,
know?
exactly. Yep, it was,
So
and
that would be my favorite. It's probably my favorite. And I know at one time, Tammy said it was his least favorite. But I think if he listened to it now, I think he would change his mind.
he's got some good ones on that too. I mean, I love Mr. Love Dog, which I know was written about
Yeah,
Andrew Wood from Mother
yeah,
Love Bone.
yeah. And that's a funny thing. My friend Britt, um, on 3rd record, he's in a band called Blackboard Jungle, and they were opening for us on that 3rd record.
Mm-hmm.
He reminded me that when we played Seattle, he said all those guys from like Pearl Jam's band, all those guys from like that were in Mr. Love Dog, or that band,
Mother Love Bone.
Mother Love Bone. He said he remembered those guys watching us, and he said he remembered Tammy. We played Mr. Love Dog about Andrew Wood, and he said he remembered Tammy talking about it live, and he said he can remember looking around. He saw the guys from Pearl Jam being in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and all the guys the guys from Alice in Chains were there too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a funny thing, is even on our 3rd record, when we were playing that record, all those guys were down there watching us. They were fans of ours, and they were
Yeah.
watching it, and they were into it. Britt said he remembered that all the guys were into it.
Aw.
And they were real impressed with that song. So it's kind of ironic how like we got dropped and like the grunge thing came in and I guess kind of killed our scene. But Britt had reminded me, he's like, yeah, all those guys from all those bands were down there, all the guys that were from Love Bone, who are now in Pearl Jam, all the guys from Alice in Chains were there,
Yeah.
He
And the
said a
thing,
couple of people from a band called Mud Honey, I think. And
yes, I actually really like
they
Mudhoney.
were yeah, they were popular. They were there at the show, and
Yeah, and
the
the thing,
guys from Soundgarden, a couple of the guys from Soundgarden were there. So everybody was there in Seattle watching us at this club. It was sold out. And Brent reminded me, it was something I have kind of forgotten about or not thought about for a while, but I'm like, yeah, that's right. I remember that when he had reminded me.
yeah, I mean, I kind of see the song as like Tammy's nod to one of his hometown men. I mean, he's a Seattle
Yeah,
native.
it is. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was kind of his like a nod to them. Yeah. And we had like, but it's so interesting. We had like the song called Friends on it, which is it's like a Stones, bluesy Stones song. And then you go to a song like Jack the Bastard, which is like really heavy, and like our Body Thief, those are almost like borderline grunge, industrial, half grunge, half industrial,
yeah,
really heavy, like
they're kind of like
Body,
they're almost Marilyn Manson, like particularly Body Thief. And what isn't Body Thief
yeah.
about the Zodiac killer?
It's about all those killers, actually. It's like Tammy wrote it about like he talked about like all the killers in that, even Jeffrey Dahmer and whatever the other one's name that dressed up like a clown. I wasn't all into that. Tammy was always into reading all those like horror books and murder mysteries and all those like serial killers and stuff. But yeah, he wrote it about all those ones. But yeah, that's really like you said. I told my friend, that song's, if you listen to the record or when in that car, it's like that's almost as heavy as like a Metallica song or something,
Mm-hmm.
It's real heavy. But you go from that to like Big Dictionary, it sounds like Jackson 5, So you go from like Marilyn Manson to the Jackson 5 to like the Rolling Stones. So the record, like I said, it's kind of all over the place, but it's really cool. Like I said, in its own way, it's very interesting,
Yeah, and one
I
thing.
still think,
Go
I
ahead.
still
Sorry.
think like I said before, I still think it could be one of those records that it might get bigger with time, I think people might discover it later, you know?
which would be great.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
And
think
I'm
of it
curious.
almost like uh Sex Pistols record, Never Mind the Bollocks. Here's a Sex Pistols, famous pink record cover and everything.
Yes.
When Sex Pistols first came out, that record probably sells more now than it did back then, when it
Of
came
course.
out.
Yep. And
And there's records like that, like even Ramones, people that and even like wearing the Ramones shirt, the Ramones shirt is probably a bigger deal now than it was back when they first put it out. So I think there's stuff that grows with time.
mhm.
And
Yeah, I mean, one of
somehow,
my sorry, go ahead.
somehow I'm still, like I said, I still am making money from those 3 records. And it's interesting because like I get the checks and I'm like, somebody's still buying. Those records are being bought or played somewhere because I'm still making money from them. I'm like, I laughed. I even tell my kids, I go, yeah, this is from work I did 30 years ago. It's like amazing. So it's pretty cool.
Mhm. I'm curious. The song "Friends" on your third record, is that actually about the band?
I think so. I think Tammy, I mean, yeah, I think Tammy wrote it about the guys in the band, but I think just about people he cared about. And it's kind of, I mean, the lyrics on it are really cool, just like how some friends are going to be there no matter what. And how some friends are fair weather friends, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's good, And one of his best friends, I think, or maybe it was him, he did it to one of his best. Somebody stole somebody's girlfriend. I don't know if it's Tammy stole Ricky Rackman's girlfriend or the other way around. But I don't know. I just think it was, probably a combination of everybody, But it's a nice song, and it was really the songs on it. Even my friend, like I go back to my friend Brent. I was just talking to him about the record. He's like, it's really interesting because the first song on the record is "Nonstop to Nowhere." Like it opens up with "Nonstop to Nowhere," and then it ends with "Out with a Bang."
Hmm.
And he goes, it's almost like your guys' career. It's like it almost, you guys are almost talking about your time like that. It's like nonstop to nowhere. You're going somewhere you don't know, and then I'm going out with a bang, like ending it. He goes, almost 2 perfect bookends. And then I think, yeah, and then even Friends was good because soon after that, we were dropped, and a lot of our friends, people that we thought were friends, disappeared. When you're
Yeah.
famous, you have a lot of friends,
Hmm.
and your phone rings a lot. When you're on top and you're doing really good, I remember your phone rings a lot of friends. But when it ends, there's a lot. Your phone goes quiet. And there's not many friends around, and a lot of people. When you call people, a lot of people are like in a meeting or busy.
Yep. Exactly.
Being dropped in one way, it's good because you learn pretty quick who your real friends are
Hmm.
because the fake ones just go away. They're
Yeah.
just not around anymore.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so yeah, Friends is good. It's like a very, I don't know how you'd say, prophetic, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, you know.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Muscat. I really appreciate it, and I'll have the interview up in a couple of days.
All right, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Alrighty. We have a
And
wonderful
when things
day.
get better, come out to Vegas and see me play.
I definitely will. Just,
All right,
just
talk to you
again,
soon.
thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye
All
bye.
right, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, bye bye.
Bye.